And now again, that unemployment rate in Oklahoma is about 2.7%. It might be even lower if school districts around the state could fill the thousands of jobs they currently have available. The school is set to resume in August. That's the topic of this week's in-depth conversation with moderator Reece Wetzel.
Thank you, Rich. And today we will be talking about school staff shortages as we approach the fastly approaching school year that is right on us. Today, joining us, I have Dr. Rick Cobb, Superintendent at Middale Public Schools, Jillian Taylor, reporter with The Frontier, and Dr. Drew Eichelberger, Superintendent at Piedmont Public Schools. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, Dr. Eichelberger and Dr. Cobb, I'm going to start with you here. Can you give me a ballpark estimate about how many teachers, counselors, bus drivers, support staff are needed in your district? Dr. Cobb, we'll start with you.
Yeah, we need a few bus drivers still, probably 3 or 4. Elementary teachers, the number I was given on Monday was 1, so that's actually pretty good. Wow. With secondary teachers, it's a little bit higher. Special ed's always a need as well. And then we have a lot of support positions open for teachers' aides, paraprofessionals, and so on.
Doctor?
So we have 4 elementary teaching positions still open. We need 4 bus drivers. We have about 10 either para or TA positions open across the entire district. We're full up on counselors, and we're just looking for some more good people.
Yeah, well, how do you attract the bus drivers and the roles that people might not be as inclined to go to? How do you get more people to push towards those routes and getting those routes taken care of?
Well, for us, we have increased starting pay for drivers, $18.56 an hour, I think is where we are. We've added air conditioning to all of our buses, filtering system for the air. We have put GPS on all of our buses for ease with routing. So if you're a substitute driver on a route that you're not used to, you have just step-by-step instructions like if you were doing rideshare or something like that. So hopefully we have some things in place that will make bus driving more attractive for people.
Okay. Dr. Eichelberger, anything you want to add?
We're doing the same things. The only thing that I would add is that we had some of our bus drivers that didn't have 6 hours or more a day, and so we've increased their hours so that they could get health insurance. And then the final thing is that we just are working really hard on culture and trying to make Piedmont a place where people want to work and want to be. And so those 2 things are, we think, over time will help us out.
All right. And Jillian, I'm going to turn to you now. You recently did a story about a counselor shortage in Oklahoma. What is the recommended ratio of counselors to students, and what is Oklahoma's ratio?
Yeah, so the American School Counselor Association, which is a group that helps out and supports counselors, they recommend a ratio of about 250 to 1. And as of the end of 2022, the ratio in Oklahoma was about 398 to 1. Which, that means that we need about 1,000 plus counselors in the state.
What are some roles that people might not know that counselors take on?
Yeah, they do quite a lot, and it ranges differently from elementary to higher grade levels. Like for elementary counselors, they'll do social emotional learning lessons, and that could be teaching things like kindness or sharing to their students. But then as you go on to high school, you might be seeing these counselors looking into ways to provide academic support in scheduling their classes or college visits for students as they're looking for what they'll be doing outside of high school. And so they'll do that, but then when these ratios are a lot bigger, they're also handling things like testing coordination, or in elementary schools, sometimes they're handling, education plans for special education, and those are duties that OSCA recommends counselors not take on.
Well, Dr. Cobb, Dr. Eichelberger, do you have counselors that have to fill into these roles and try and help where there's shortages in testing or wherever it may be?
For us, counselors do a lot of things, and I think it's a lot of what Jillian said. We are more concerned with social emotional learning, and we have added counseling positions each of the last several years to try to get our ratio down. But having qualified counselor applicants is a challenge as well. And really, when it comes to testing, when it comes to writing IEPs for students, there are a lot of people that have a stake in doing that, and counselors don't have to be in every IEP meeting, but there are some IEP meetings that you absolutely need a counselor in because of the nature of the student's specific needs.
Dr. Eichelberger, we talk about getting qualified people into the right position. Is there still the teacher emergency situation where people can get emergency certificates, and is that part of ways of filling the voids in these classrooms?
Well, I think most of us are using that, and I think the key to that is professional development. Once we get those people into those positions, they haven't gone through teacher training, and so they don't know what it's like in a classroom. They've been in a classroom, but only as a student, and so we have to spend a lot of time training them, and so we do, and there are some excellent teachers that come out of those, and some that find out that it's not what they wanted, what they thought it might be.
Well, what's the difference between someone who just gets their teacher certification versus the emergency certification?
So a teacher that comes through the traditional program is going to do student teaching in a school for a semester or more. In some schools they do it for 2 semesters. And then they will have a cooperating teacher, and they will take classes that are specific into pedagogy and classroom management and the technology that you use, and those are just a few of them, but much more prepared, to be a teacher when you go to a teacher college.
Yeah. And Jillian, in your research looking at the counselor situation, did you notice anything in the education package that is dedicated to counselors to try and help mitigate that shortage?
Yeah, I mean, we see some raises that came in for teachers as well as these counselors, $3,000 to $6,000 based on experience, and that just levels out over the amount of years that you have. But also, we're seeing that these counselors have master's degrees, most of them do, and so that means that compared to bachelor degree educators, they're only making about $1,000 more each year. So I talked with some counselors who said that, for the starting salary that's coming in with this raise, that the $40,000 starting salary, they took about 25 years to get to that. And so while that's, a raise is great, there's still some challenges that they're experiencing.
Now, do you know if they have to have a master's degree to be a counselor? Is that required?
It is required, yes. There is an alternative track that you can take, but you still mostly have to have a master's degree, yes.
All right, and Dr. Cobb, we're looking at the teacher shortage as well. How are classroom sizes this year as you head into the 2023-2024 school year? I know when I was in school, it just felt like they kept growing. Is that still the situation?
So in Medill, we have always prioritized maintaining lower class sizes, and sometimes when we can't find a teacher, it changes that. And so we set a target limit for each grade level, each middle school team, each subject area in high school, how many students per teacher, and we try to keep it in that range. And sometimes you have, after you've set your faculty, you have 3 or 4 students move in, and it shifts that balance around a little bit. But we've been able to maintain a pretty good class size across the district.
Yeah, and I know that you're new to Piedmont, but how are things looking as you head into the 2023-2024 school year? Are you anticipating large classroom sizes?
Large is relative. We will have larger than we like, but we're a growing district. We grow 225, 250 a year, and so we have to plan for that, and we continue to. We're committed to low class sizes, but you have to have the teachers and you have to have the space, and those are our challenges right now.
All right. Well, I want to turn back to Jillian here. We're talking about the COVID pandemic funds with counselors, and a lot of that was used to help support those roles. What happens when those funds run out? Do they run out this year? Is this the last year of them?
Yeah, it'll be one more school year for those. There's about 201 school counselors that were hired through that program, as well as some other support staff members. But once that runs out, then school districts will have to decide if they're going to cover the other half of the salary that was provided by those pandemic relief funds.
And is there any federal plans in effect that could help mitigate that?
Not currently, no.
Not currently. Okay, and Dr. Cobb, when you talk to counselors or teachers, what are you hearing that they want most? Now that they have the raise, what's next?
I think there are a lot of challenges that we have in schools right now since the onset of the pandemic. But one challenge that predates that is just the political narrative about public education. And I think that our educators want to see the people in those leadership positions in the state dial that down and show us some respect. show our teachers who spend every day with the children of the state the respect that they deserve for being in the classroom and dedicating their lives, for starting salaries that don't match other professions for individuals with bachelor's and master's degrees. So I think that that's probably the biggest thing other than salary that our teachers would like to see.
Well, Dr. Eichelberger, that brings up a good point. Recent headlines have made teachers feel uncomfortable in the classroom. Is that an issue with the teacher shortage still? Is that not making the raise almost as enough to get teachers back in the classroom? Is there still that narrative that they're uncomfortable and don't want to teach here?
Well, teachers deserve the raise, and that will never hurt, giving them additional funds, because we're just trying to keep up with the people in our region. But that doesn't necessarily solve the problem. In fact, it doesn't solve the problem. What Dr. Cobb was talking about the narrative that's out there and the way teachers are perceived by some is really challenging, getting people to go into education as a profession in college, to choose that when you go into college. So we have to do more about strengthening the culture across the state about what it is that teachers do and how they're perceived by the others, and then we have to make sure that they're respected by all of us.
Jillian, you spoke with counselors. What are some of the things that are impacted at the school when there is a counselor shortage? How can that affect students, teachers? Does it trickle down?
Yeah, definitely. There's less time for them to have direct services with their students. And for that, talking with some of the counselors, they would say, we're doing specialist rotations and we're teaching lessons about counseling, but that means that we're not available for students if something comes up. And so it just means that the positive outcomes that they're seeking are harder to attain. And a lot of times they'll take time out of their schedule and, at the sacrifice of their own well-being to meet those needs because they care so much about the students.
Yeah. And Dr. Cobb, when you look at Mid-Del, how is it in terms of janitorial staff, lunch staff? Is that a staff that's been built up, or is it still seeing shortages there?
That's another area where we are hard to staff. We've reached with all of our support positions. Dr. Eichelberger mentioned TAs and paras. Well, we have a lot of those employees who've worked with kids for years, and they've decided to take the leap. Well, can I go into a classroom as an adjunct or an emergency certified instructor? And so it's as people are moving up and trying different things to have an impact on students, we have other positions that are harder to backfill. And so that goes to everything. I think the ones that get the most attention are teachers, counselors, bus drivers, but I don't think that there's a job classification in education in Oklahoma where you have just a super deep talent pool right now.
Wow. Is it the same situation for you, Dr. Eichelberger?
It is. It's the very same. What we find in our janitorial staff is that they're very transitory. They'll come in, they'll work for a while, and then they'll get a better job, better paying job or something. And we don't blame them for taking those jobs, but it's hard to backfill and train those people. So it's a continuous challenge.
Well, now that we kind of are headed into this new school year, what are you both anticipating from this school year? I mean, are you anticipating these shortages to have an impact, or what do you see overall for this school year, Dr. Eichelberger?
I think it's going to be a great school year because educators take what we're given and make it great. And so our teachers, our administrators, board members are going to do with what we have and do a really good job, a great job for Oklahoma students. With more teachers and more counselors and the support staff that we need, we could do an even better job. So there's work to be done. All the states around us are continuing to raise the amount of money that they're putting into education, and so we have to put money in just to keep up.
Dr. Cobb?
I'm actually really excited about the school year. We had a leadership retreat with our principals and our central office staff yesterday, and the enthusiasm was palpable. On Monday, our board passed a bond resolution calling for a bond election on October 10th that's going to really put a lot of investment into facilities and programs and student opportunities so that in Mid-Del, where we don't have the same bonding capacity that some of the other districts around us have, we're not going to be in a position where we feel like we're catching up but trying to lead in terms of what we're providing for our students. And so I think just in the last couple of days even, I've started to see enthusiasm about the school year and about the future building, and hopefully that can carry forward through the first day of school on the 9th and into the bond election on October 10th.
So those upgrades are really giving the staff some momentum there and to take into the new year.
Yeah, when I talked about that yesterday at our leadership retreat, it was there was a lot of excitement. There were even a couple of gasps in the room.
Is it going to add more classrooms and help mitigate the shortage?
Yeah, the areas where we have classroom shortages, it's going to take care of that. We're going to finish up adding storm shelters at every single one of our campuses where we have full-time enrollment. We're going to co-locate some programs that are in buildings where or campuses where you have a building and a building and a building to try to secure the perimeter, but also improve opportunities for our performing arts programs, for athletics. We have safety and security upgrades across the district, which was the #1 priority in every survey and community forum that we held. And so just trying to meet all of those needs in a pretty short period of time is something that I'm really excited about.
Dr. Rick Cobb, Jillian Taylor, Dr. Drew Eichelberger, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks, Reece.